I'm well aware I don't do these candid style one-on-one videos a whole lot, where I'm actually talking to you, but I've become bored of my usual style of videos, and I felt like switching it up so I could talk about something that I'm deeply passionate about. My ever-increasing collection of consoles and or gaming platforms that I play games on, comparatively to gaming platforms that I make cookies on. Dumbass bread. We all have that thing that we collect because we just find it cool. We're fascinated with it. We want to know how they work. And we just like seeing them in our house. I know some people who collect books. I know other people who are avid movie collectors. And I know some people who collect a lot of physical music. My thing is I like to collect weird gaming peripherals and consoles. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a whole lot of interest in controllers or console add-ons yet, but I do have a fair bit of consoles, along with stories of how they came in my possession. So today I'd like to spend some time showcasing these consoles and just discussing them for a while. Originally, this was just going to be a really quick video about my various consoles and how they came into my possession. But as I started remembering things and thinking back of how I got these, I found a lot more nostalgic childhood memories came about. So let's not waste any more time and begin. The first thing on the table today is my retro gaming computer. This hunk of junk is a certified data PC. Don't ask me what certified data is, I don't know. It has an AMD Supron 2800, one stick of barely a gigabyte of RAM, and a like 40 gigabyte hard drive. It's a dinosaur. It also has a 3.5-inch floppy disk drive, a CD drive, and several other drives that I'm not smart enough to know what they are. Either fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your opinion of it, this computer runs Windows XP, the Windows version I am most nostalgic for. Typically, when I decide to boot this thing up, it's mostly to play Windows XP Solitaire or that Space Cadet pinball that everybody loves. I managed to get this sucker completely free.
Okay, so maybe there was a teeny tiny itty bitty wee little catch.
The catch was that I helped my neighbor move out about 4 or 5 years ago, and they told me if I wanted the tower as well as a monitor, that I could take them. I think they were moving into a smaller area, so they needed to get rid of stuff anyways. Currently, it doesn't have any internet support, which is fine by me, because I wasn't planning on using this on the internet at all anyways. I assumed this previous owner, William, would have plugged it into the Ethernet port. And I would have too, but the Ethernet in this area that I live is kind of fucked, and I don't know if it works or not. I have fond memories of using my family's old Dell Windows XP, actually. Notably the fact that in order to go on to some of my favorite edutainment Flash websites, such as starfall.com, I would have to use my brother's account. Unfortunately, my brother is figuratively fucking insane. My parents decided that me and my 2 siblings would share a PC account because they didn't really see a reason to have more than 2 accounts on the PC. One for my mom and one for me and my siblings. Since I was the youngest, I didn't have any say in the account. Instead, my eldest brother had the say of neon purple UI everywhere, and goddamn, it was horrible. Anyways, these days I try to keep my PC very traditional to the XP aesthetic, because I really like the Windows XP aesthetic. The only thing I've really changed though was the wallpaper actually. I changed it to an MS Paint art piece that I did on a Twitch stream a few months back, when I did a Windows XP variety pack where I showcased a lot of the loose CD games that I had. Interestingly enough though, a handful of months back when I got my 3rd Rona booster, I had found an entire 2004 era graphics card just sitting out there in the parking lot. So of course I took it home and now it's in my possession. As far as I'm aware, it does work. I just don't have any of the proper connecting pins or cables to shove it into this PC. Nor do I even have any of the space on the back of it in the first place. The graphics card has an HDMI port, a VGA port, a DVI-I port, and it's just a nice little graphics card, to be honest. I'd love to shove it in here just so I could have higher speed, higher quality space pinball action. Fuck yeah! So this one isn't technically my console, it's my mom's, but it's in my possession either way and I'd like to talk about it. That's right, the NES. My mom recently told me about how she was very happy and excited that this is still functioning flawlessly, because it was in our storage unit for like 2 decades, grunting the worst of Canadian weather while it was in there. And also, it survived having her house struck by lightning, to which the outlet that was plugged into was the release for it. So it cracked her wall and basically fried the insides of her TV. Amazingly, the NES still survived, so she doesn't remember if it was in the living room at that time or if it was in her bedroom. Either way, the NES is probably my favorite retro 2D console, next to the SNES and the Genesis. Not that there was a whole lot of options at the time, to be honest. When I was younger, I would actually get Nintendo Power magazines every so often when we went to the grocery store. Those days were the highlights of my childhood. I vividly remember the covers of the Mad World issue, the Rayman Origins issue, the Mario Galaxy 2 issue, and the special 25th NES Anniversary Edition. I remember them all so vividly for a variety of reasons, but most of the time it was because I thought the art on the cover was cool. Especially the Mad World and Rayman Origins one. I really like these two art styles. I can't for the life of me find it, but the Mad World issue had a full-page ad for Tomb Raider Underworld, and that was my first experience to Lara Croft and the Tomb Raider series as a whole. And it definitely awoke something in me. I can't quite pin it down, but I'm certain you guys can figure it out. Nintendo Power introduced me to a lot of franchises that my friends at the time knew about, but I didn't have a whole lot of experience with, such as Mega Man, Cave Story, Rayman, Tomb Raider, Call of Duty, and Resident Evil. I remember being completely enamored with the 25th NES Anniversary Edition because it showed me a lot of NES games that I really didn't know about and thought were really cool looking at the time, such as Bonk's Adventure and Mega Man and a few other games that I can't remember right now. It also had a mini-comic about the NES Power Glove, which was that piece of shit, chunky work glove with a fancy NES controller stapled to it. That comic really oversold the actual quality of the Power Glove and made me think that it was the coolest thing ever, when in reality it's just kind of nothing. Unfortunately, the full comic isn't easily available online as far as I'm aware, but you can find some pretty low quality scans of the comic if you look in the right places. Unfortunately, when I was like 7, I had this phase of making little paper cutouts of my favorite characters at the time. And, how do I put this lightly? My Nintendo Powers were the first victims of that. I was 7, okay? Fuck off. I don't feel like I deserve to collect them now due to the sins that I committed in my past. As much as I would like to, I'd feel too guilt-ridden about what I did to their brethren if I ever got them again. I picked up this one actually very recently, only around mid-October. The PlayStation 1. After getting my Xbox 360, the next console on my target list was definitely a PlayStation console. Either the PlayStation 1 or the PlayStation 2. I wanted one so I could finally say that I had a console from all of the major players. Lucky me that I found an almost complete PlayStation 1 console. It was only missing a memory card. I paid around $50 for the entire console, which included a controller, all the proper cables, and the console itself. Currently, I only have one game for the console because I bought it so recently, and that's Pac-Man World. But I do have a short list of games that I would like to collect as time goes on, such as the Crash Bandicoot trilogy, the Spyro the Dragon trilogy, and Final Fantasy VII. Not that those games have any childhood nostalgia for me, but because I've grown to be a massive fan of those franchises as I grew older. Because I played Final Fantasy VII on Steam, as well as the Crash and Spyro remakes, as well as Final Fantasy VII Remake. All of them I'm really a big fan of, trust me. Along with that PSO&E console that I had in my childhood, for a brief window of time, I did also have this exact model. Nicely enough, I actually had it in my bedroom for a while, much to my siblings' dismay. And it fucking rocked. I remember spending so many late nights playing Patriotic Pinball, Dexter's Lab, and Cool Borders 3 on it. These days, though, that childhood PS1 is with my brother now, because we made the explicit agreement that when he moved out, he got to take the PlayStation 1 and all of the related material, and I got to keep the GameCube. Because at the time, I enjoyed the GameCube a lot more than I did the PlayStation 1, and I also had this feeling in my gut that the GameCube would be a lot harder to find at a decent price later on, so it'd be a smarter idea to just find a PlayStation later and keep the GameCube that I had since childhood. Unfortunately, as much as I don't want this to be true, the GameCube market is fucking awful right now. People are selling their GameCube consoles, games, and peripherals for disgustingly massive prices. So, unfortunately, my gut instinct on that one was right, as much as I didn't want it to be. I have this very vivid memory of my dad trying to scare me one night by zipping up one of those full zip up skeleton hoodies and like spaceman walking into my bedroom while going. Apparently I let out a very loud shriek, according to my mom, but I don't remember doing that, so. Actually, but this is the exact sweater that he did it with. I'd love to show you the full thing zipped up, but unfortunately the zipper head broke in two and is now in some landfill somewhere, and the zipper tag is currently sitting on my desk upstairs. In other words, it's broken, and I can't zip it up anymore, unfortunately. Oh, fuck, that's right. Yeah, I just remembered something about Crash Bandicoot, actually. My first encounter with Crash Bandicoot in any sort was this really kind of shitty McDonald's Tiger Electronics style toy. I remember playing that game every time I came across it in my massive collection of toys that I shared with my siblings. It was one of those, like, PvP, like, space shooter games. It wasn't all that great, but I remember having hours of fun with it. Much like how my mom was happy that her NES survived being in storage, I'm very happy that this survived being in storage. This is my favorite console of all time. Mostly because it was the console that I grew up with, but because I also think genuinely it's one of the coolest consoles ever. Despite this though, it's one of the two consoles I have the least amount of games for, only sitting at 3 games. This was the first console my family ever got. My dad bought it off a coworker for something like $80 or so. Then we went to a flea market and got Surf's Up, Disney Cars, X2 Wolverine's Revenge, and Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door. Despite what I say now, my first favorite game for the GameCube was actually X2 Wolverine's Revenge. Though I will say Mark Hamill as Wolverine never really did it for me, as I've always been a Hugh Jackman supremacist. I actually remember lending X2 Wolverine's Revenge to a friend once, and they never returned it. This was one of the worst things to happen to a 5-year-old me. I got that friend back a few years later when I went over to their place once after a while of not talking to them, and I nabbed Super Monkey Ball 2 for the GameCube off them, as well as an Xbox Cabela's rifle. Still have both to this day. Personally, I think the GameCube has some of the most fascinating little add-ons to any console ever. A lot of them are really useful and really desirable. The wireless internet adapter that was mostly used by Phantasy Star Online 2, as well as that really goofy-looking keyboard GameCube controller, also for Phantasy Star Online 2, are just really goofy to me. The one peripheral that I really want is the Game Boy player. I've tried playing some games on authentic Game Boy hardware, and due to the fact that I have long fingers, it just cramps my hand up really badly, and I'd much rather play on a couch with a controller comparatively to trying to play with a tiny screen and a tiny interface. Unfortunately, right now, it's almost impossible to get both the disc and the actual Game Boy player in the North American versions for a decent price. My research has shown that just the disc alone is about $150, and the actual player itself is about $50, or both for $250 to $500 in good condition. It's very frustrating. And I still don't know why the GameCube has a fucking handle! This console is the one that I've had for the longest consecutive time, sitting at about 12 years now. Every other console I've had for either less time or I've had a bit of time in between the times that I did own it. Such as the GameCube, where I had it for a bit as a child, it went into storage, and then I had it a lot as a mid-teen to young adult. If I'm counting both of the Wiis that I owned, then I had it for about 15 or 16 years. Yeah, that's right, I had the original Wii. But the laser reader in it stopped working after a few years, so we had to get a new one, which is this one. So we got this one that released with Wii Sports Resort. We also grabbed Mario Galaxy 2 for it because I think that had just come out at the time and I really wanted it. I'm fairly certain my parents got us the Wii in the first place for the get children active reason, as well as us being old enough to warrant having a new family console. This would also be the last family-used console that we would ever get. And after 6 or 7 years, my brother started getting his own collection of consoles, mostly the Xbox 360 and a couple of the Nintendo handheld systems. Anyways, back to the Wii. I experienced so many games that would go on to become some of my favorites on this console, such as Rayman, The Sims 3, Lego Harry Potter, Lego Lord of the Rings, Super Mario Galaxy, and many more. I used to go to my local library very frequently to try and rent as many video games as possible. And it got me to play so many franchises and games that I still fondly remember to this day, even if they aren't that great. Such as the Pokepark series. One game that we got back when we still had the white Wii was Super Smash Bros. Brawl, which is my favorite Smash Bros. Entry in the entire franchise. Partially due to nostalgia, but also partially due to thinking that Subspace Emissary was the best story mode in any Smash Bros. Game ever. It's the exact kind of childlike idea of a crossover that I fucking love. I finally remember the times when me and my siblings would watch our mom play Endless Ocean and Endless Ocean Blue World, as well as the times where we would just sit and play single-player games together, creating little worlds and little stories based off the characters in the game. My siblings were more interested in creating their own world and characters based off the ones presented, while I was just more interested in seeing the rest of the actual game's story. Funnily enough, now they're both aspiring actors and artists, and I love my siblings, but it frustrated me so much when they just wouldn't get to the next part of the game and just bumble around the hub world of Mario Galaxy. I wanted to fucking throttle them. Anyways, that's really all the memories that I have related to the Wii. Everything else I just kind of wrote over with new experiences with the games that I played on the Wii that I also played on Steam. As much as I would like to continue going on about the Wii, I really don't have anything else to say. To end things off, this is the console I have the least amount of experience with. As a kid I wanted one, but I was never able to get it for one reason or another. The Xbox 360. I'd mentioned this already a little bit previously when I was talking about the PlayStation, but now I'm gonna fully talk about it. The closest that I ever came to owning an Xbox 360 before now was going to friends' places and playing Minecraft and other games with them on their systems. I remember watching a bunch of those old Minecraft myth videos, such as how to spawn Herobrine and how to get to the Aether in Minecraft. I fell victim to that Aether portal one pretty fucking hard, because I remember trying it at a friend's place on their Xbox 360, and when the water just flowed normally, I was heartbroken. Around 2019-ish, my brother got himself an Xbox 360 with a few games like Skyrim and Skate 3. Actually, bringing up my brother, when he bought himself an Xbox Series S, he was willing to give me his copy of Skate 3, because he didn't seem to need it anymore. Circa March of 2022, I was in my local thrift store and I found an original Xbox 360 Pro, the chunky white one, with the hard drive and the controller. Unfortunately, the controller didn't have a battery pack and the console didn't have a display cable, a power cable, or anything else. And the worst of it was that they were asking for about $30 for all of that. I didn't get it, of course, because that's not really worth it in my opinion, and it would have taken me about twice that amount to 3 times that amount to get the rest of the parts, in decent working quality at least. Even then, who knows if the actual system worked. Then a few months later, I was out of town doing a few errands for a family friend, when I found a thrift store outside of my usual area, and so I decided to go into it because something was beckoning me, and I found this little beauty. Entire thing. It was the console, the power cable, a controller with a battery pack, all of that, asking for $20 for the entire thing. Conveniently enough, I already had a military green Microsoft HDMI cable that I could just use, which I did. I found a charge cable for the controller at a flea market about a week later for $5. Unfortunately, I've learned that the battery in the controller doesn't hold a charge anymore and won't be usable unless I keep it plugged in. But that's really fine because I enjoy having a controller with a cable plugged into my consoles. But yeah, console, power cable, controller, battery pack, all that for $20. That's a fucking steal. Fortunately, I brought it home and it worked perfectly, so I've been using that to play a lot of games recently. And now I'm slowly gathering games for it. Currently, I have about 4 games for it. Top game that I want for it currently is Lollipop Chainsaw, so I hope I find that soon before the remaster comes out. It's gonna be awful. I'm calling it now, it's gonna be bad. Actually, one last thing. A month before I got my Xbox 360, I had went to my local flea market and saw an Xbox 360 with a copy of Lollipop Chainsaw for about $50–$60. I didn't get it because at the time I didn't really need it or want it, but now that I know that a month later I would have gotten this, I'm very frustrated that I didn't get it anyways. But it's neither here nor there. Can't change the past, really, can I? And so that's my little collection of technology. Of course I have other stuff too, but it's all either too new to be able to really talk about my experience with, or just not really all that compelling. I might do another video like this next year about my games collection, as I have many games, both containing nostalgia and others just having interesting stories about how I obtained them. Who knows, I might make this an annual series, because I seem to find some really solid discoveries and good deals in my local game stores, thrift shops, and flea markets every year. Hopefully next year I'll find some really good discoveries. So yeah, if this at all interested you, then leave a like. If you feel so compelled, leave your own stories about obtaining consoles that you think are interesting, or your own nostalgic memories of video games, as I love hearing about those kinds of stories. Thanks for the support recently. I very much appreciate it. I've grown a lot this last year, and it's kind of freaked me out, I'm not gonna lie. But I'm very glad that you guys are enjoying the content recently. It's really made me motivated to get back into working on videos. So yeah, see you guys next year. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. How do I fucking turn this thing off?